Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Son of a Blitch podcast. I'm your host, George Blitch, and I'm here today with a very special guest, Josh Smith with Montana Knife Company. How you doing today, man?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Look, I wanted to kind of dive into a little bit of your history to kind of bring us back up to where you are now. And there's some really amazing accolades that I read about. One that you were the youngest master bladesmith at 19, but I know that starts even before that. You were the youngest journeyman to start. Can you kind of bring us, all of our listeners, to the beginning of how you got started with making your own knife? Who was the person who inspired you, and how did this all get started?
Yeah, I was a Little League baseball player. I grew up in Lincoln, Montana, and I was playing Little League, and my Little League baseball coach, his name is Rick Dunkerley. He still makes knives today, makes really beautiful knives. He was coaching me and invited me. My parents actually bought me one of his knives for Christmas. I was constantly wanting to check him out when he would bring them to practice and show the other dads and whatnot. And so my parents bought me one of his for Christmas. And then after that, he invited me up to make one in his shop, and ended up making two or three kind of over a few months, going up, kind of bugging him to go back up there and make more. And honestly, it just really clicked, and pretty quickly kind of transitioned to starting to buy some equipment. I had a lawn mowing business, and I also worked in my parents' excavation business. So transitioned to buying equipment and having it in my shop at home, my dad's shop. And then my dad's pretty clean. His shop's pretty tidy. Well, I was starting to make too much of a mess in there with grinding dust and all that. So
Sure.
We enclosed a lean-to at my dad's place, my mom and dad's. And I had my own little space, a little 10 by 10 uninsulated lean-to shed, and started working in there, and kind of took off from there.
That's awesome. And then I know that you talked about before you joined the American Bladesmith Society. What was your decision to go and become a journeyman? And then, yeah, because I know that's pretty much taking that step to the next level of you, not only for your own personal skill and advancement, but then it seems like maybe that was the time when you decided this was something you might want to pursue, maybe as a living in the future. Or is that something that kind of clicked at that moment, or was that just a challenge? What was that for you?
Yeah, I don't know that the living part clicked just yet, but Rick had the foresight to tell me as a 12-year-old, like, you should join the American Bladesmith Society. I think he saw something that, like, I was pretty driven.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember him specifically saying, like, you could become the youngest journeyman in the world, if you want to do that. And so, to become a quote unquote apprentice knife maker, you really just have to join the American Bladesmith Society. And so I paid my dues, I joined. And then after a couple of years of being a member, I decided to go ahead and try and test, and went after my journeyman test. The American Bladesmith Society is really more of a blade forging organization. It's not necessarily, knife making per se. It's forged knives. So especially back then, there was the Knife Makers Guild, which lent more to people who just grind knives. And then there was the American Bladesmith Society that was more geared towards the people who forge knives for a living. So I joined that. They were fantastic. There was a lot of very supportive people. And I ended up testing when I was 14 and a half. I did the performance part. I had a birthday right around there. And then I turned 15 and tested the final stage of that test, and became the youngest journeyman knife maker in the world at that point. That test is cool. I mean, it's a very good test of your ability to not only make a blade that looks nice, but also a blade that performs well. There's two parts to it. You have to make a blade that chops a 1-inch rope in half in one chop, which just tests sharpness.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to forge, that same blade has to be able to chop two 2x4s in half. And when you get down to the end of that and you cut that last 2x4 in half, that knife still has to be able to shave all that rope and 2x4 without resharpening. And then at that point, you have to bend that blade 90 degrees in a vise without breaking it. And what that does is that shows that you have control over your heat treatment of your steel, that you can make a sharp knife. You can make a knife that has good edge holding ability, but isn't so hard that it's brittle. It shows that you have control over that process. And then after that, you have to take 5 knives to Atlanta, Georgia, to the Atlanta Blade Show, and present 5 finished knives to a panel of judges, mastersmith judges, and they judge like your fit and finish and your quality of your knives.
Is there a certain type of knife that they ask for of those 5, or is it your own that you're presenting? Is it like what does that look like?
There's just a few parameters. At the journeyman level, they don't want you to present Damascus blades. They have to just be carbon steel blades. Generally, they're not a fan of you presenting folding knives. It's mostly all fixed blade knives, traditionally. And I would argue that as times have changed, it would be, and I don't know if they've done this yet, but it would be nice if they would allow, someone to present it like a pocket knife. But beyond that, especially at the journeyman stage, you're just completely free to design all your own knives. When you do the mastersmith test, there is one blade that they require, which is a Quillian dagger, and that they have some size parameters, and the fact that it has to be a Quillian dagger, but your design of that Quillian dagger can vary obviously within that. And the reason that they require that one blade is it kind of shows that you can work within some super tight parameters, and that blade's also fairly difficult to make from a execution standpoint. So it kind of forces everybody to at least do one blade that has to meet a certain criteria, and those knives at that point can be Damascus, and quite frankly, that's they judge that test a lot harsher than they do the journeyman test. A journeyman has to be able to show that you are, what I would call a professional level knife maker, but you're not necessarily making perfect knives at that point. When you test for your mastersmith test, they're holding you to a very, very high standard. I think when I passed, there was around 80 in the world, and now there's probably 130.
Oh, wow.
120 or 30. So, 8 or 10 guys will test and 2 or 3 will make it.
Is there a certain allotment of times you can retest, or is that it's just unlimited until
you have to wait for the performance portion? If your blade was to break or have something, I think you have to wait 6 months to retest. But as far as like at the Atlanta Blade Show, you could retest each year. That blade show is once a year, so that pretty much you got to wait a year.
Yeah. When you talk about Damascus, now I'm familiar with it. I have some Damascus knives, but if you could kind of walk us through maybe a process of what is a Damascus knife. If someone was, first time buyer and they hear that, I know they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's popular. And they might know the look, but what is it that differentiates that from something else? How is that made versus maybe some other knives?
Yeah. Damascus steel is layers of steel forged together, bonded through, fusion of that steel at a certain welding temperature. If done correctly with the right alloys of steel and at the right temperature, those steels bond with no visible cracks or lines, we call flaws, poor welds. So you definitely add an element to the making of the steel there. It was believed way back when, even in like those samurai sword maker days, that the more you folded the steel, the stronger it got. As we know now with technology that, steel is steel, it's metallurgy. Mm-hmm. So it's more about the elements that make up the steel and how that steel is heat treated that really determines whether or not a blade is high functioning and a good blade. Damascus definitely served a purpose though back in those days when it allowed you to take multiple pieces of steel and forge those together and make a larger item out of something. So, you don't just drive down to the steel store back then and order a piece of steel that fits whatever you're going to make. You had to forge it. That's why a lot of the, components to, wagons and, you think about the old blacksmith days, in the western towns of America or in the towns of England and Europe. There was a blacksmith in every town making parts and pieces for stuff. And they use that they use the forging process to manipulate the steel into a shape that they needed it for a functional item. Now with Damascus steel, it's really strictly just based around looking pretty, looking cool. It's functional artwork.
Yeah.
It's artwork that doesn't hang on your wall. It can hang on your wall, but you can also take it down and go gut out an elk with it. So, which is cool.
Yeah. You that kind of brought something to mind when you're talking about kind of the idea of, useful art and hanging stuff on the wall. I know for a while you were building custom knives I know, we can get into it later on. I know Montana Knife Company, it's kind of been around for, almost 2 years now, but before that, and you were making custom knives, kind of walk me through that process. I know you did that for a while and that was kind of the main income before you joined into being a lineman. What was, what kind of custom knives were you mainly doing? I know you did some daggers, some swords and things. I've seen some amazing, some examples, and I'll show those on the video here to kind of give people an idea of some of the artwork you created. 'Cause some of those, I mean, they look like museum pieces, man. And I'm just kind of curious how that, some of these orders came about. Maybe what are some of the interesting ones that you did that, are kind of memorable that you'd like to maybe talk about?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I graduated high school, the career portion wasn't necessarily. Yeah, I kept having all these old knife makers tell me like, "Don't do this for a living. It's a hard way to make a living." And I had ambitions of taking over my parents' excavation company, but frankly, the knife making thing was kind of burning in me, and I pretty much had to find out for myself. And so sure enough, I went full time making knives when I was about 20, 21 years old, and made knives full time up until about 2010. And it was about a 10-year stretch. But, I had 4 young kids, babies. The economy kind of went out from underneath the knife world or underneath the world at that point. And
Right.
I was making very high-end custom art piece knives. They were $2,000 to $15,000. So the first thing that people cut out of their budget when, a recession hits are high-end custom knives. Looking back on it, I probably would have been just fine had I stayed doing what I was doing. But if you watch the doomsday news back then, we were in a recession and we were headed for the next Great Depression.
Right.
And, so I had an opportunity to take a job at the local power company. I initially took a job as a guy doing, digging on gas lines, excavation work, thinking I was going to get a welding apprenticeship. And I actually quickly switched over to the electric side, just reading the room at the age of the guys that were going to be retiring. And, got a lineman apprentice position and became a journeyman lineman after a few years there. And I took that just for stability, paid vacation, 401k, great wage, making knives full time. It's like being an artist. If you're not working, you're not making money. If you screw something up, you lost all that time. It's a tough way to go. And frankly, I was trying to ascend kind of to the top of the knife world and become known as one of the top makers during that stretch. I was really getting there. But I was really starting to question as I saw a lot of the people I really looked up to, like the older guys that were in their 60s. And I was looking at their quality of life and like the fact that they're probably not going to retire. And I started just really questioning whether or not making knives full time, one at a time, high end art pieces was just going to seem like it was going to always be a very difficult road.
Sure.
But I also had the idea of this company I wanted to start, and I named it Montana Knife Company. And I actually registered the name with the state of Montana when I was 19. So, but I didn't launch the company until I was 39. So for 20 years, I had one friend that probably got tired of me talking about it, but we would talk about launching this company. And so it finally got to the point where as I was working as a lineman, I knew I had to scratch that itch. And my new wife at the time was encouraging me to do it and launch this company. And I just felt like none of these companies were making hunting knives, like knives for hunters specifically.
Right.
There's a lot of great knife companies out there, but I can't think of very many of them, if any, that just call themselves a hunting knife company. And that's it. Now, granted, we're trying to grow and expand, and over time, we'd love to have pocket knives and tactical knives and all that. But we're a hunting knife company first and foremost. So, but yeah, back to your question about like cool pieces. I made a couple custom swords and some daggers for a sheikh in the Middle East. That was a cool deal. He flew me to London to meet him, and we looked at some old swords in a museum there at the Wallace Collection in London. He then flew me to Istanbul, Turkey, to look at some swords at the Topkapi Palace. And then when I made those swords, he flew my ex-wife and I to Abu Dhabi to deliver them, which was just a really cool experience. So, in making custom knives, that was really, frankly, probably the best part of it was the people you meet.
Sure.
I mean, I would sell knives to just regular blue collar people like myself and the people I grew up around. And then I'd be talking to, a hedge fund banker in New York, or a computer software guy, or a lesbian couple. I mean, it didn't matter. The range of humans that I got to deal with that appreciated high-end custom knives was really cool,
Well, and what's neat too now is that, everyone is able to go on and be able to experience getting a really badass knife from you. And, if you can kind of walk us through how you kind of have your drops and, what that looks like. I know next week, and I'm going to have this airing before this to kind of, help promote that as well. You've got a culinary, drop with 3 different incredible knives. This is your restock. You had some a drop that was incredibly successful. I think it was last month, and I know I'm looking forward and kind of counting down those moments too. I got the stopwatch on my phone ready for those. But if you can kind of walk through how people are getting your knives through Montana Knife Company now, how did you guys decide to do a drop instead of maybe having like a backlog of orders and things that you might have done when you were doing customs?
Yeah, no, good question. And thank you for that, for the support and whatnot with that. We kind of somewhat stumbled into that. I mean, I started making prototypes for this company, and I took them to an event called Winter Strong that Sornex puts on. And I showed those prototypes to a bunch of really cool people, and they were kind of inspiring and said, yeah, go for it. And we're behind you. And came home from that. That was the spring of 2020, which was COVID, like diving straight off into it. And, I'd quit knife making one time before when the economy and things got crazy. And this time I kind of decided to really take the opposite approach and just dive straight into it. And, we launched the website in July of that year. My now business partner at the time was just kind of paying him to do a little bit of content and make me a website. And
that's Brandon Horoho,
that's
right?
Brandon. Yes. Yep. And, I initially was paying him, and then I saw how talented he was and good at what he was doing. And I realized I couldn't afford to pay him. But I needed his expertise. And so I offered him partnership in the company. Frankly, it was kind of partnership and nothing at that point. But then, he kind of started getting after it that fall. And by January of 2021, things were really starting to roll. And it was like pretty clear that I needed to kind of step away from my job, but that was still super scary because we weren't making enough money to make a living at it yet.
And you got 4 kids, and you've got, like you were talking about, the retirement, all the different insurance, the different things, the 401k, that kind of livelihood and that stability it's tough to step away from.
Yeah, it was a giant gamble that frankly I felt kind of selfish about taking. I mean, my ex-wife, hopefully she's not my ex-wife, my wife was really encouraging me to quit my job. She was the one that was like pushing, and I was like, man, I'm making $100,000 a year here and all these benefits. And like, if I just keep doing this forever, life is good. But I also knew like I was pretty much at the ceiling of anything I was going to do at that job. And I knew I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I never tried this. And I just believed that this would be successful. And so, the drop thing wasn't necessarily an intentional thing from the beginning. I just, frankly, the place that I had grinding the blades, like a mass production type grinding stuff done on it, they wouldn't grind any less than 200 blades. And I was like, oh my God, that's a ton of blades. And it was a lot of money to, buy the steel and get all that going. And so I did 200 blades. And then I did another run after I kind of had sold those. And that's really how it started. And then all of a sudden it started taking off to where I was like, well, shit, I'm going to do 300 blades or 400 and now 500. And now we're going to cut 1,500. I mean, that's really how it like ramped up. And frankly, it was just the sales that kind of drove it. And we weren't borrowing money. I mean, we were using the money from one drop to pay for the next and just building, just kind of that bootstrap kind of American dream type style of business instead of just going out and borrowing a ton of money. And I really wasn't willing to borrow a bunch of money because I'd already put my family at somewhat of risk. I definitely wasn't going to strap us with a lot of debt. And frankly, with the people ask me like, why don't you take pre-orders? If I want a knife, why can't I just order one and then you send it when it's done? I do not want to take people's money until I can send them something. And you're not going to get the knife any faster. It may guarantee you that you're going to get a knife.
Right.
But now what I'm going to deal with would be people emailing or calling saying, hey, you told me April 1st and it's now April 15th. Where's my knife? Instead, and I don't ever want to be pressured to put something out that's not right. Like the chef's knives, when we did our initial run, those were probably in my shop for 7 months before I finally dropped them. Like we kept playing with different finishes, kept playing with different techniques, sharpening, like all these different things. And had I let pre-orders go out like in January, it would have been a disaster. And I probably would have been tempted to put them out before they were ready. So that's just kind of how that took off. Now, that being said, we want to have knives in stock on our website all the time. If you want to come buy a knife for your, dad for his birthday next week, and you just remember on like Monday, like, oh my God, I need a gift. We want to have something available. And so we actually Brandon just started hinting at on Instagram this morning, this December 8th time frame.
Yeah,
December
I saw that
8th,
12, 8.
Yeah. We're going to launch Speed Goats to be in stock full time.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's like our first knife that we'll have in stock. And then, we're going to start working towards other models. But here again, like as much as we've grown and, have some success going, it's funny. It still takes a lot of money to like push out, like the more and more blades you cut, the more equipment you have to buy, the more employees you hire. So I don't think sometimes people understand. It's not like we just have millions of dollars sitting here to just push out, and that's the thing about China and Chinese products. They'll order containers and containers full, dozens of containers, hundreds of containers full of a product, and they'll get 10,000 of them landed on the coast where, we're making 1,000 or 500. And so it's harder for us to just create stuff to be available all the time. It takes some work.
Well, and you're making everything here, very proudly American made, and you've got the American jobs here. You're supporting this economy locally and throughout the country. You're delivering the highest quality knives, and you're touching every single one. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you're basically hand sharpening them. You got a hand on each one before it goes out. It's seen your eyes, it's your hands. You know that, okay, this represents what I want it to. This is an MKC knife, and there's certain things that come along with that. And that's something that you're not going to compromise in getting some cheaper quality or something that could be more mass manufactured and things like that. And I think that is, it feels like that custom knife still. It feels like it's something when you hold it in your hands that what's been put into it. And I love that personally.
Yeah. And and to be, full disclosure, like I no longer touch every single knife myself. Mm-hmm. I build all the prototypes for it. Every knife that we make, I build custom prototypes one after the other until I get them exactly how I want them to feel. I develop all those processes. Yes, I still do some of the sharpening and some of that in the shop, but frankly, we've gotten to the point where I'm so busy on the business side and doing stuff like this trying to
Right.
grow the brand,
Yeah.
that I'm not the guy sharpening. That being said, I'm in the shop with them every single day. I am picking knives up. When I shoot a video or I do something, I want to show how sharp something is, I grab it right off the rack and go over and do it. Like, that thing better cut.
Right.
I have phenomenal employees that I've trained that are doing a really great job. It's actually funny. Sometimes they kick knives out, like upon their inspection, there'll be like a few knives laying here that are like in the reject pile. And I'm like looking at them, I'm trying to figure out what the problem is here. And they're like, well, there's this little speck right here on this side of the blade. And even sometimes I'm the one where I'm like, okay, well, you're getting a little aggressive here. Like, that's just fine. We are making a production knife. It's not, a $2,000 custom, but I'm proud of that, because that's the level of expectation our employees have.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. Like, I would way rather that than get a knife back from a customer saying, look at this giant streak, that somebody let go through your shop, or the fact that it's dull. It's so yeah, I'm super proud of our team we're building. To me, any great company has to have amazing team members. And I mean, we have a phenomenal team right now.
That's great, man. That's great. Well, it does speak to a testament of your brand and what it is you want to put out, and having folks like that as employees. I mean, it's so invaluable, man. It's great. I'm really happy for you. And
I mean, and I want it to be a place that people want to work. I mean, I remember, that corporate lineman job where, you just feels like you wear a prison number, and it's the corporate headquarters is 3 hours away, and the top 5 people in the company don't know who you are and don't give a shit. And,
right.
Like my worker in my shop here, Tristan, killed a really nice buck on Sunday. Death marched himself way into this terrible, terrible place, and this like crushed himself all weekend, and was like, called our director of operations, like, I'm not coming in on Monday. I am cooked, and so, he's working 410s, and he's working today through, Tuesday through Friday. I want to have flexibility for our employees in our company, and provide some cool opportunities that they might not get at a place that really doesn't care about their personal lives,
Yeah, and it speaks to the kind of the lifestyle of the brand too. I mean, like you were saying, there's a lot of hunting knives now. I know you have culinary, and there's some other use of knives too. And like you said, eventually there may be some pocket knives and some things that are kind of just every day. And I've seen some that you have too that are some really good for everyday carry too. But there's the utilitarian aspect of that too, and it's really cool to see that you guys are using your own products, that you have employees that are going out and using those. And it's like, yeah, it is. I mean, I bought the Stonewall Blackfoot, and I'm just amazed at it. And it's such a wonderful knife. And now I'm looking at the Blackfoot 2.0. I'm, signing up on your website too. And for those who aren't aware, if you go to montanaknifecompany.com and you see a knife you want, you can go ahead and put in your email address, and you'll be notified when those are dropping next, and that's, I'm super pumped for just kind of getting the collection of all these. And I wanted you to talk about too, like, I know you mentioned at one point when you were a lineman, and then you kind of stepped away, and you had then, launched, your company, and there was a post you had where there were linemen that were bringing power to your new shop, and kind of this really full, 360 coming around, oh, that's where I would have maybe been, and can you talk a little bit about the new shop? Is it fully running now? Is that something that you guys, I know you've been bringing in equipment, but have you guys made the move from your previous shop to the new one?
Not yet. It's funny. That's part of why I'm so busy this morning. It's actually going to be nice to run a knife company and not also be a general contractor at the same time, because we're building this building, and we're just jammed up on space with where we're at right now. And like this morning, I have to shut all our bead blasting down because we're shooting these videos for these new medical kits we're going to be dropping, but we can't have the noise in the shop because we have to shoot these videos. And
right.
It's funny. We're just kind of working on top of each other and around each other. And this would not work without great team members. I mean, they're like family. They love each other. So it's great. But yeah, the new building is super close. It's actually frustratingly close. There always seems to be one thing that's holding it up. 3-phase power panels right now, the panels for our electricity to land in the building. We ordered them in May. They're still not here. They've been delayed now a third time last week. Garage doors I ordered in May. And they should be in by December 1st, but to me, I was told September when we ordered them.
Right.
And it's now mid-November. And then we're just doing a few things. This morning, I had to run to town. My plumber called me this morning and said, "Hey, we're coming out to set everything. What kind of vanities did you buy?" And I was like, "Oh shit, I didn't buy."
I will let you know in 3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. So at 8:00 this morning, I was driving 90, headed to Home Depot, and I bought 2 vanities and 2 countertops and sinks and all the stuff. And I was home at 10 with all that. And so they're actually installing that right now. Should have water in the shop today. One of my employees is putting together a bunch of racking. There's a lot. Like, it's one thing to build the building. It's another thing to build out the workbenches and the racking and the storage and just all the stuff around it. And then frankly, the only other thing that's going to hold us up till January is our dust collection system. There again, that's something we ordered several months ago, but we have a big dust collection system we'll be putting in. But that's super, super important just to keep the shop healthy and clean. And I just refuse to work in it, as tempting as it is to get in there in December and start working. It'll just make a mess and be dirty. And I'd rather keep that dirty mess in kind of our old shop we're in now.
Yeah.
So, by the 1st of February, we should really be rolling in there, but we should be moving in like all the merchandise area and a lot of the racking, a lot of that stuff here in like the next week. They're putting carpet upstairs in the offices, starting tomorrow. So things are coming, but it's, it's been a challenge with, just with the building and the supply chains and everything,
Sure. Where is this located near your shop that's in existence now? Did you buy some new land for this? Tell me about that.
It's about 50 feet from my new or from my old shop.
Nice.
It's on my property. And this is, again, kind of an example of like also trying to be patient and take baby steps and build it the right way and not take undue risk. Like with some of the revenue and some of the numbers that we were doing, like you could have probably argued that we could have gone out and talked to some investors and, sold a big chunk of the company and raised a bunch of money and go try to build some, $8 million facility somewhere. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still learning how to run a production company. I mean, I was making art knives.
Right.
So to make knives by the hundreds or thousands is not my expertise. So I am learning as we go along. And so instead of biting more off than we could chew, and frankly, building something huge that wasn't even maybe built the right way, we're taking that next step with this building, which is on my own property. It'll allow us to keep our costs down, build a building that, could be a nice shop that I could use down the road if we move away from here with MKC. And frankly, this building really is, the whole goal behind it is like a 5 to 7 year like stepping stone building, to where once we feel like we actually know what we're doing and we're not just faking it till we make it, at that point we can build maybe like the ultimate facility that, is a 30,000 square foot or 50,000 square foot, like giant knife production facility. But that would be pretty reckless, especially in this economy on the brink of nuclear war and everything else that's happening.
Right.
Again, just undue risk I wasn't willing to take, Well,
and you talked about too, like you had registered the name for MKC back when you were 19 years old. And I remember reading an interview or actually I think it was a video that you talked about how you felt like you had one shot to do this. And then when you did it, you were going to put everything into it and you knew it was the right time. And it looks like, you can say, and with confidence that like you did it at the right time. And I like that you're taking these stepping stones to make sure that you're not getting ahead of yourself, and that you do have like that 5 or 7 year plan for this building. And then, you can have that later on, and that you're learning how to do that. And like you said, too, you went from a custom, maker to now more of a production side. And I think it's a smart business strategy to take those steps and to take that time and make sure you're doing it right. So I think that's great, man. I'm excited to see where all that's going to go. Talking about kind of growing up and in where you did, I mean, and making hunting knives, I can only assume that's because you grew up as a hunter and that was a big part of your lifestyle, right? And I believe you kind of mentioned about the Bob Marshall Wilderness area, and that was kind of like an area that you kind of grew up in and hunting. Can you talk to me a little bit about maybe your history as a hunter and how that kind of maybe influenced to, your desire to make hunting knives?
Yeah. I grew up in Lincoln, Montana, which is right on the edge of the Bob Marshall. I didn't personally hunt a lot in the Bob Marshall because for the most part to hunt in there, you have to be, have livestock to get in there. But I hunted, right on the edge of it all the time and on national forest ground. I grew up along the Blackfoot River. I hunted a bunch in a tree stand as a kid down there. My parents didn't hunt, so I did a ton of that, just figuring it out by myself. And then there were a couple guys in town that were super impactful hunting wise. They would take me hunting. Just a random guy in town. I look back on, it's actually kind of amazing to me that he took the time to take me. He had his own kids and he would take me hunting, which was cool. My uncle would take me a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I just absolutely loved being in the outdoors. I love the hunting part of it. I love seeing the animals, and I wasn't generally highly successful at that point in my life, but I loved being out there. And then over the years, I just got into it more and more, got into more and more into archery. And I had a ton of people and it was something that really bothered me when I was making customs was my stuff was pretty high end, pretty expensive. And you would have people locally with just kind of regular jobs, want to order a hunting knife. And I always felt this obligation to like charge them less, or if I tried to charge the price I kind of needed to make money out, then it's a super expensive hunting knife. And it bothered me that they didn't really have like a good option. They'd ask me like, well, what hunting knife at the store should I buy? And I'm like, man, none of them. Like, there's just a lot of garbage in the stores. And I didn't feel like any of these companies were making any knives that were designed by hunters.
Yeah. It's like a CEO who might not even ever hunt, who's saying, let's put out X many of these. We're going to sell this. Grab this material from China or whatever it is, right?
And generally, we're talking about companies that are making kind of everyday carry pocket knives. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. But the hunting, I just felt like the hunting world was being just somewhat ignored, and I also didn't think that, it's interesting. I had another knife maker tell me when I was telling him what I was going to do, he's like, well, you got to have that stuff made in China. Like you cannot compete with these big companies. You just can't compete with all American made stuff. And he's like, you're going to have to charge $300 for that knife. And I'm like, well, then that's what I'm going to charge. And I guarantee you people will buy it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we're ever going to get as big as those companies. Like I'm sure there's more buyers out there for $120 knife. But I don't really care. My goal's never been to be the biggest knife company in the world. It's to be the best. And honestly, I think if we're the best, or one of the very, very best, like we're going to do well enough to make good livings.
Sure.
So that's kind of been the goal along. And I wanted to be able to provide if a father wants to buy, his 8th grade son, his first hunting knife, he doesn't have to spend $1,000 to do it. But I also think by charging what we charge, it also provides a little bit of value in it, that it means something. And it's like, it's not an, oh, well, I lost it, throw away. It's still, I'm going to just toss it in the corner, get another one situation. It's no, that was $300. Like that was more than I've spent on any other knife. And I want to take care of it, or I want to keep sharpening it. I want to pass it down.
Yeah. Legacy knife. Right.
It really bothered me that, this whole throwaway knife, replaceable blade, thing that came along, we pass down knives, guns, artwork, and jewelry. Like in general, I can't really think of much else that we really actually pass down as humans. And all of a sudden, we're now making one of those 4 things that we pass down to throw away. And I've sharpened personally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of knives that grandsons and daughters and sons have brought to me to sharpen because it was grandpa's knife. And I'd even have guys apologize, like, I know this isn't like on your level. It's just an old buck knife. And it's like, no, man, like that knife means a ton to you. Like you should 100% sharpen that thing and clean it up and then have it sitting in your safe. Or, some guys still like to carry their old grandpa's knife just because their grandpa carried it. So that part I really like. And it's one of the best things that I see is people buying knives for relatives, for sons and daughters and fathers and grandfathers. It's pretty cool. And now, like with the chef stuff, I absolutely hope that people are going to be able to gift a chef set or, someday inherit, grandma's chef's knife set and still have it in the kitchen, even if they are mostly worn out,
I was talking about it last night with my wife and our oldest daughter around the kitchen. I was telling them about the culinary knife set and how excited I was. It was dropping again because I didn't know when I missed out on it. Like we had some family function and I came back and I was like, sold out, no. And then I saw that y'all are doing a relaunch of it. I was like, okay, here, everyone, we are not doing anything on the 22nd. We will be around the computer, and I know because it sold out fast.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I mean, they're amazing looking knives. And I was talking to her. I was like, this is a knife set that you're gonna get, when we're gone. Like, that legacy knife that, the idea that it can be passed down and it's not, and everything's meaningful. Like I have a rifle that was my great grandfather's, or my great grandfather's, and it is an incredible. It's amazing, but it's something that I don't use often. But it's there and it means something, and I'll be passing it along to my family, but also being able to use something often and be able to pass. Like I'm definitely going to have, the culinary set off to the side, and it's going to be just the 3 of us that can use it, who know how to use knives properly and aren't going to be like, oh, let's drop this and, mess something up. But I want to be able to preserve that. And I know that you have with your company, you talk about how you will actually sharpen up these knives too. So if they ship them to you, you handle the shipping fee and stuff too, that you guys are going to touch them up. And I think that's incredible to have that type of service too, that, it's like some folks might not know how to sharpen a knife very well. I know that, people buy these little rinky-dink sharpeners and it's really not the best way to do it. And I know for those who want to really learn more, I know on y'all's YouTube site that you guys have a lot of different steps on how to sharpen and how to use strops and different things too. And I think those are really helpful hints. So if anybody wants to learn how to sharpen a knife correctly, definitely I encourage you to go to YouTube and search for Montana Knife Company there.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
absolutely. No, it was super helpful. I was sending out the links the other day when I was kind of going through and doing some research, and I was like, oh yes, I went and ordered a whetstone from you guys, and you have some sharpeners on your website as well, some other accessories as well. So it's not just knives too, that there are also accessories there that people should be checking out, and some really cool nice hoodies and some hats as well. There's some great stuff, man. I want to circle back to the idea of how you guys came up with the idea to do this culinary set. I know this was a collaboration with another individual. If you can kind of talk to me about how that, came about.
Yeah, collaborated with Mareko Malmasi. He's a highly respected, well-known chef's knife maker. But there again, he does really, really high-end chef's knives that frankly aren't probably very attainable for the average person. And I think this kind of answers a little bit of a question for him and some of his customers that want some of his chef's knives, but maybe can't afford them or get on the list. But I wanted to make sure we had credibility with our design in our culinary stuff. Like I'm not a chef's knife maker, so the last thing I'm going to do is just come out and make something and call it a chef's knife.
Right.
I think that's important. And frankly, the culinary thing was something we wanted to do because we like to call it from first blood to last bite. If you harvest your animal, there's nothing cooler than pulling that backstrap out of the freezer 2 months later, or 4 months later, and cooking it, for some friends. And to me, that cutting that meat up in the kitchen is still part of that experience of that hunt.
Yeah.
That gets to last for a while. And the other part of it is, we have a ton of women that were asking us, like, I don't hunt, but I want some of your knives in our kitchen. And frankly, for us as a company, there's way more people that cook food in their kitchen at night than hunt, right? Like, everybody cooks
Right.
food in their kitchen. The biggest hobby in the country is cooking. So obviously there's a larger market there. That's something we can kind of capitalize on. And frankly, we want to, I don't want to spill the beans, but we want to do some other things to really fill out other products that really take you from the beginning of your hunt all the way through to the end. And, over time, have steak knives, sets, and stuff like that on the table. And like you said, they're not cheap knives. They're special. I expect most people will probably somewhat protect them and won't let them just beat around in a drawer.
Yeah.
But if they do and they get dull or whatever, absolutely, our Generations program, that was super critical to me. And again, that's part of that price point of all of our knives, leaving room in there to then be able to turn around and replace knives that need it, or replace parts, or sharpen them. And nothing pains me more to hear, like, somebody left a knife home from a hunt because it was dull, and all they would have had to spend is $5 to ship it to me, and I'll pay to ship it back to them. So yes, there are sharpening stones on our site. We're actually going to be shooting more sharpening videos, more how-to stuff to really answer that, because that's our number one question that we get, is how to sharpen. But ultimately, after doing touch-ups for a while, if it gets to the point where you're just struggling and it's not the way it was when you bought it, send it to us. It's super simple. It takes 5 minutes to box it up and ship it to us, and we'll take care of it.
Well, and you also talked too just there about the idea of, like, not just throwing it in a drawer and maybe it getting all messed up. You guys have some guards on these culinary knives too, to protect the actual blade, right?
Yeah, and there's two reasons behind that. There's kind of a sheath or a slip that we call it over the blade that actually buckles on. And absolutely, I envisioned a few different things happening. One, people that do want to store them in a drawer, they're safe. If these knives are extremely sharp, so if you do reach in a drawer, or a child reaches in to grab a spatula out of the drawer, they're not reaching in there and hitting a knife. Two, it protects the edges for sure. But honestly, the other big part of it for us was, they come with a leather bison roll that I want people to be able to throw these in their little sheaths in that bison roll and take them on an experience, whether it's a hunt, a camping trip, maybe it's Christmas vacation to go to the families and you bring your own chef's knives to cut up your ham. I want people to be able to travel with them safely, and actually get them out of the kitchen and take them around. And, especially I envision, like, guides at base camp having a nice set of chef's knives. If somebody kills a moose in Alaska and they're at base camp, they can cut up some back straps and have dinner, things like that. And we've been seeing that already. So it's pretty cool.
That's my intention too. I have a ranch in Southwest Texas. I'm a 5th generation landowner there, and I completely am looking forward to getting these so that I can also take them and be able to utilize them. Because one of our favorite things to do there is we take an animal, like let's say we take a hog, and it's like, all right, we're going to go ahead and do some pork belly, and just being able to have that one awesome knife that, like the Blackfoot Stonewall is, that is a great hunting knife there too. And, being able to use that to, get the animal apart, and then be able to use some great chef knives. And I just, I love working with high quality things. I'm at that point in my life too, where it's kind of the buy once, cry once. I've bought so many budget things in my life. And then there was a certain point where I just sold off all the cheapo guns that I had. And I've done this with different musical equipment too, when because I'm a musician, and so there's times where oh man, this cymbal's great, it's cracked, but it was $20, and then it's like,
Right.
okay, now I'm going to go ahead and buy something that is quality, that I know is going to last a long time. I'm going to treat it right, and I love that idea, and it's come full circle around all areas of my life too. And I think that that's something where people if they may be intimidated with that price line of seeing, oh, that knife is that much. It's like, you're going to have it for the rest of your life. If you don't know how to sharpen it well, you can send it back. You guys have the integrity of your company. This isn't something that's going to break. It's not something that's cheap. You're not buying some crap from China. You're buying something that's made in America, American made jobs. You're supporting this economy here. And you're supporting folks who are doing the same kind of things, that are outdoorsmen and women, and chefs. And I just love what your company represents. And I'm a huge supporter of you guys, and I love to hear all the things you're talking about. I can't wait to see all the things that are coming down the pike. And I just want to say thank you for coming on today. I know you have a lot to go, and you're juggling today as far as things that you guys got going on there too, in the building and in the marketing world. So I just want to thank you for coming on, and please keep us in mind if there's some other big drops that are coming up, even if you got 10-15 minutes to come on and we can chat, and kind of our listeners can learn about what's coming up. I encourage everybody to go and check out your socials. Can you tell people where the best places are to find you, and some news about what's coming on with the company?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on. And second of all, besides the podcast, just the support. I say it all the time, and I don't know how to get it across to be as sincere as possible, but it's cool. You've seen our shirt on like a Joe Rogan, or you've seen some of these famous people at times carrying our knives or wearing our stuff. But nothing has anywhere near the impact that the totality of just every other regular Joe person that's been supporting us and telling their friends, supporting us. Like, that's the part, those are the people that actually drive and build the company. Obviously it's nice to have some of the quote unquote celebrity support.
Sure.
But man, the support from just people going to work, doing their job every day, that are, I went to Costco this weekend to actually get a couple TV monitors for the new shop for our like meeting areas and stuff. And I saw a guy walking out of Costco. I wasn't close enough to him to talk to him, but he's wearing one of our hoodies. I had no idea who the guy was. And we get DMs every day. I saw your hoodie in New York at this bar, or I saw it in Atlanta at this. And people like that are just doing their daily tasks and shopping and deciding to wear our shirt that day means the world to us. So thanks for your support on that.
You're very welcome.
As far as news goes, Instagram, obviously that's kind of our main platform that we kind of concentrate on, at Montana Knife Company. If people are more interested in kind of what I personally am up to and my family and some of the behind the scenes, I have my Instagram at Josh Smith Knives. And then I'm actually firing up my podcast again. I had that last year. We were actually talking, I recorded the first episode I've recorded in a year last night in the new shop.
Awesome.
And, it's pretty cool, but I haven't posted a new podcast in a year and a half, because I frankly lost my podcast space in our shop. It got too busy and I didn't have room for it. And I kind of just said, I'll pick it up later.
Yeah.
But in the new building, I actually have a studio in my office that I've kind of built out just for that, with video and the whole 9 yards. We're lucky we get some pretty cool people that come through here, visiting and doing things. And so it just makes sense to be able to get those people and have them tell their stories. And so I did that last night with Tier. I'll be dropping that. My podcast is called The Josh Smith Show, because I'm not creative and I didn't know how to name it. And I don't have a cool name like Blitch. So call it Son of a Smith, but I don't know if it would have the same rhyme.
There's a ring to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of where you can find us. Obviously we're on, I think we have a Twitter, we have Facebook and all that stuff, but really those Instagram and our website, just montanaknifecompany.com. So yeah, check us out. Like you said, the best way for sure is to get on our email list. Brandon's really good about making sure people know when things are coming, and I would tell people too, if you get frustrated missing out on a drop, we've gotten better and better. Our drops are lasting longer and longer. And it's not necessarily because sales are slowing down. It's just because we're making bigger and bigger runs.
Yeah, making more, sure.
Yeah. And don't get frustrated. Like it's not like there's very little that we ever do that's just a total one-off. Like we'll have more drops. So I encourage people to kind of hang with us.
Well, and you have a sign up too that, it's kind of like a secret drop, and you'll get text messages or emails that will be like, hey, this is live now. And there's some chances too where you get on that list. I highly encourage it. And there's some really great links and things that are coming through. It's a definite fun, email and text list to get onto. There's all sorts of cool stuff and content that's coming out. But yeah, I've seen some things that pop up there. Hey, it's for sale right now. And it's kind of just like, you got to hop to and get it, but it's a great chance to kind of maybe catch a rebound if you didn't get the first one. So that's really great.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And thanks again for having me on. And I'd be more than happy to jump back on with you sometime when we got more to chat about. So
I'm looking forward to that. Well, thank you again, Josh Smith, Montana Knife Company. Everybody go check them out. And once again, thanks for joining me today.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.